Welcome to our daily devotion from Christ Lutheran Church in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. I am Pastor Tim Gerbing. Today we take a look at one verse from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, and we read there verse 21. On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. It's easy to skip over a short verse like this, but it sure tells us much. At the age of 8 days, according to the law of Moses, Jesus was circumcised. Now, circumcision was not commanded by God for reasons of health, nor was it simply an odd tradition practiced by Jews. Submitting to circumcision meant that an individual was obligating himself to the entire covenant that God had given to Israel. All of its laws would apply to him. This is kind of strange for Jesus because as God's Son, Jesus is holy and sinless, and God's law is meant for sinners. But by submitting himself to circumcision, Jesus made declaration that he would submit himself to the law in the place of all sinners. The Apostle Paul writes that Jesus is the end of the law because he fulfilled it all. And now, through faith, we receive Jesus' righteousness and his life that comes from that righteousness, instead of the condemnation of death that sinners deserve. In the Old Covenant, much of God's law required sacrifices: bulls, goats, sheep, doves. Who knows how many animals were sacrificed? The animal's blood was usually drained and poured out on the altar. The carcass was then burned on it. No one was allowed to approach God unless the payment of death was made. But sacrifice also directed the worshiper to God's promise of forgiveness. Not a forgiveness that's achieved by doing good deeds or avoiding grievous sins, or trying to be better than other people. This was a forgiveness that Jesus, God's Son, would supply as the only perfect and the most valuable sacrifice that could be made, the sacrifice of the life of the Son of God. This death made payment for every sin and provides full and free forgiveness to everyone who believes. Already in his short life, 8-day-old Jesus shed his blood. It was painful, but brief. The blood shed was just a few drops. 33 years later, the pain would be far more intense. Jesus' suffering would include rejection by his Father and the punishment of hell itself, a shedding of blood that would result in death. That's what was necessary to save sinners, and Jesus willingly offered himself to accomplish it because of his love for us. Thank God for the sacrifice that Jesus made for us all.